Hi everyone, in this video we're going to be taking a look at how to write a blog for anyone studying level 1 or even level 2 for functional skills English. Now if you haven't done so already, please can you like and subscribe, it really does help us out when you do so. If you also want access to additional content, please do consider joining our membership channel. That's going to allow you to access a lot more content as well. By the end of this video you'll be able to recall key skills for reading, analyse a response for deeper understanding, and finally, apply your understanding to practice writing a blog. Generally speaking, this is one that gives people a lot of issues, so we thought we'd have a bit of a deep dive on this and just break it down and see what a good one looks like as well. Look at the exam question and attempt the challenges that follow. So this is the writing task that we're going to focus on for the whole lesson. So imagine you've just completed 2 work placements. In your first placement, you found it boring and unhelpful towards your future career plans. The second placement was much more rewarding. You were left feeling optimistic about your future and what you wanted to do going forward. So here's our actual writing test then, based on the scenario. Write a blog detailing your experiences aimed at people who are looking to gain work experience. Your blog should be encouraging people to gain as much experience as possible and explain how it would benefit their future. So as you look through the writing task then, think about the following challenges. So for the first one then, identify the main points of the exam question. A lot of the time we get these writing questions where there's so much to unpack. It's really important that you take the time to write down maybe a few of the key words, or if you have it in front of you, to highlight or underline any of the key phrases as well. Super challenge. So would a blog need to be formal or informal in terms of the language that they're using? And the mega challenge. What would the success criteria for a blog look like? Try and justify your ideas. Now, if you're not too sure about the answers for these ones, don't worry too much. We will be going through these at a later date as well. What is a blog, and why do we need to revise it? So a blog then is an informal expression on a topic or subject of the writer's choosing. It is more personal than other forms of writing. Often these come across as being read kind of like a diary entry, and anyone can really start a blog as well, and you've probably actually used one without even realizing it, especially if you've typed in something, you've had a question about something. 9 times out of 10 a blog will come up and it should give you the answer. So why do we need to revise it? So it's important to revise blog writing as it's a different form compared to a lot of the other forms that we've looked at. In the exam we won't know what form of writing you'll be expected to produce, so you really need to make sure that before the exam you've covered as many of the different forms as possible, because you don't want to be sat there in the exam and find you get the one that you've been dreading, that you haven't revised much or you don't know very well. So before we move on, I'd like to think about blogs in general. So what topics might you have in a blog? And think back to any that you would have read online. These can be very general things, and again, just try and have a think, have you actually read one online, or is it something you're completely new with? Look at the blog and attempt the challenges that follow. So our blog's going to look something like this, and the first thing I want you to think about is what kind of presentational or organisational features have been used in a blog. So you'll notice in this one, for example, we have something vastly different to a lot of the different forms of writing we look at. We actually have a web address there, because blogs will be something that we find online. So think what other organisational or presentational features would be used. Is a blog formal or informal? So do they use proper English, or do they use slang or colloquial language in their writing? And the final one, read the full blog post and attempt the quick fire questions. Now if you do want to actually have a go at the full extent of the questions go up to 10 if you actually download the document, but the one we're going to go up to now, it just goes through 5. This is still a really good thing to go through because it just helps to actually practice your reading skills. It doesn't matter if you already completed one level for reading, you'd still be expected to do that for level 2 and even for GCSE as well. Look at the blog and be ready to respond to the quickfire questions. Turning experience into expertise. Have you ever had one of those jobs where you feel like there are never enough hours in the day? Have you ever felt under pressure, undervalued and underpaid? Well, that was me 12 months ago. I was stuck in an office that was more like a prison. That's right, an actual prison. Not like one of these cushy do whatever you want prisons. I mean the ones where your days are devoid of sunlight, breaks and access to good food. The solution to all my problems, it turns out, was to stop moping about it on social media and get my butt into gear. But David, you beautiful fool, that's what you're doing right now. Don't worry, I hear you. This isn't going to be a big whinge sesh where I go on about how hard life can be. Instead, I'm going to tell you how I pulled myself together and used work experience and a little hard work to get myself out of a bad situation and into a good one. So if you want to spend your time now and just go through it in a bit more detail, please feel free to do so. We're now going to jump ahead and look at the quickfire questions. Quickfire questions. Using the text, respond to the questions below. Number 1. Look at text A. Which of the following words best describes the tone of the writing? So we have friendly, argumentative, and aggressive. Number 2. Can you select a quotation to justify your answer for question 1? So what we mean by that is you look back at the text and you find a specific part that might show that it's either friendly, argumentative, or aggressive. Number 3. Look at text A. Where has the writer used a triplet or a group of 3? Now if you're not too sure what we mean by this, please do check out our other videos that go through the DeForest techniques. That's some of our key language techniques that we need for this kind of writing. Number 4. Look at text A. What is the purpose of brackets? And we either have to show excitement, to add additional information, or to show really important information. Number 5. Where has the writer used colloquial language? If you're not too sure what I mean by that, it's the same as slang. So if you want to pause the video here and go through the questions in more detail, please feel free to do so. We're now going to jump ahead and go through the answers in the next part of the video. Class feedback. Check your answers against the ones below. So number 1, the writer has used a friendly tone. Now it might be that you disagree with this answer. If that's the case, that's fine. You just need to make sure that your response with actually question 2 supports your first idea. So for example, if I'm going to argue that it's a friendly tone, for number 2 I'd put, this is evident in the quotation, don't worry, I hear you. So from the way I looked at it, or the way I interpreted the blog, it seemed to have quite a nice conversational style, and it seems like it's talking in quite a friendly manner to the audience. Number 3. Answers may include, but are not limited to, under pressure, undervalued, and underpaid, or devoid of sunlight, breaks, and access to good food. So each one of these examples, you've got 2 examples there, will count as a triplet or a group of 3. Number 4. So the point of brackets is to add extra information. Some people would argue that it's important information, but if it was that important, they wouldn't have put it in the brackets, they would have included it with the rest of the information. And number 5, answers may include, but are not limited to, sesh, whinge, and cushy. So these are all examples of colloquial language. Look back at the exam question and attempt the challenges that follow. So we're looking back at the writing task that we looked at towards the start of the video. And now that we've kind of gained a bit of an understanding about the topic and we've seen an example of a blog, I want you to think about the following challenges. So can you come up with 3 or 4 ideas to help focus your paragraphs on? So use the response that we've just read and try and think about, can you use any of those ideas and put them in your own writing? Super challenge. You need to decide now, from after we've read it, is it acceptable to use colloquial language in your response? And if you think so, or if you think that you shouldn't, try and justify your response. Mega challenge. Using everything we've gone through so far, try and create a success criteria of your own of how to write a blog. Now it's really important that you try this by yourself first, because then you're actually starting to question the certain techniques, the certain organisational features that you might need, and the kind of tone as well that comes into this form of writing. Class feedback. Check your understanding against the teacher's ideas. So hopefully you've came up with your own success criteria. These are just some of the ideas that I've came up with myself. So to write a successful response, you need to write in clear, coherent sentences, write in the appropriate form for a blog, use the appropriate tone for a blog, write in paragraphs, use a range of DeForest techniques, and have accurate spelling, punctuation, and grammar. And then the final one as well, something we often neglect to point out in a lot of my videos, is meet the desired word count, or get as close as it as you possibly can. So typically you'd be looking at 250 to 300 words. You don't really have to count every single word that you've wrote, but have an idea of how much that looks like in a page. And remember, in an exam, typically you will be answering 2 questions during the time as well. So managing your time, managing the amount that you write for each question is going to be really important. So what I'd like you to do then, before we move on, is just try the stretch and challenge task. Think, how does this compare to some of the other forms of writing that you've studied? If you actually have a look down the success criteria now, you may find that there's a lot of these elements that apply to all of the writing forms as well. And hopefully that will boost your confidence a little bit, knowing that really it isn't quite as difficult when you've got all these different forms of writing, because a lot of them do follow a lot of the same rules and the same patterns. So what I'd like you to do is think back to that writing task that we just went through and have a go with these challenges. So based on everything that we've kind of went through during this lesson, I want you to think about that when you're applying it to your writing. So for the first challenge then, complete the writing task and use the success criteria that we've just come up with to help guide you in your response. Super challenge. Use at least 3 language techniques in your response. So maybe you're not great at using your device techniques, but if we can just get into the habit of using it a little bit more, eventually by the time you get to the exam, you'll be absolutely great at using those techniques. And the final one, submit your response to be marked and respond to the feedback. So hopefully you have a teacher or a tutor that's helping you get through this. If you're struggling, however, and you need help, please do consider joining our membership. If you do need anything marked, I'm happy to do that and provide you any kind of feedback that you may need leading up to the exam. So in terms of our next lesson then, we're going to focus on the following things. So one of the big ones we haven't really went into loads of detail about would be how to write a speech. So we're going to look at that. We're going to revise the key techniques, and we're going to evaluate a response against the teacher's feedback. And all of this is just to get you ready for that exam, making sure that you can go into your writing assessment or your reading assessment feeling as confident as possible. If you need any additional support or help, then new videos will be added every single week. Alternatively, leave us a comment below or visit our partner channel Bookworm Teaching for more lessons and guidance on all things English. Thanks ever so much for listening, guys, and all the best with your work and revision in the future. Bye bye.